Hello there, and welcome to the Ahaki podcast. In this series, I would be your host. I am Dr. Olga Jessica, and I have an amazing guest here who I would introduce sometime later, in a few minutes. This theme of this series is titled Incarceration of Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights in Africa. And like I told you, I have an amazing guest. She's called Molly Nkosi, and Molly Nkosi is the Executive Director of Vital Rights Foundation and the Chairperson of the African Reproductive Justice Litigation Alliance. Molly, you're welcome to the podcast, and it's such a privilege to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I will just jump right to it, Molly. So, in Malawi, I would say that Malawi is a country that is faced with several criminalization. I don't know if it's if I can clearly classify or categorize it as a restrictive country, but I do know that your organization has defended women and girls that have been facing criminalization for abortion. As chair of AJLA, I know that you also work with legal practitioners and advocates across the continent in order to advance reproductive justice in Africa. So I think my question would be that, given that Malawi's criminal law is among the most restrictive on the continent, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and prosecutions are rising, can you help us understand what is happening on the ground and who is being the most affected?
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Yes, of course, I am from Malawi. So Malawi's legal framework on abortion is restrictive. It's not completely closed off like some countries, but it's restrictive. So under our Malawi Penal Code, the abortion is unlawful, except for one exception, which allows for an abortion to take place if it's to save a life, and it's only done through surgical procedure by a medical professional. However, we do have the Gender Equality Act, which affirms the sexual and reproductive rights of women and girls and everyone, actually. And however, because of the way the penal code is actually set up, then it's used to criminalize abortion, and it's used to actually further marginalize women and girls in the country. Prosecutions are indeed on the rise. We haven't had a trend of many reported cases of women being arrested. However, earlier this year, we had a woman who actually is suspected of procuring her own abortion, and she was arrested in a lodge where she was actually residing in for that night. And the attendants of the lodge are the ones that actually reported her to the police. And this situation was actually very, very telling of how bad having such laws can be used, because up to this day, she has not even been taken to court to take a plea. There's always been adjournments. So she's being denied access to justice, and she's being victimized because she's on bail. She doesn't know what her fate is. And there's clear indication that there's a lack of will to actually prosecute that type of a case. But because the law is there, it's being used to further victimize her. I will just give an example. For her situation, she was actually taken to the hospital because she was still bleeding and still suffering from the procedure, and she was taken to the hospital with a police officer actually looking at her. So these are the type of situations that women have to undergo after having faced the criminal justice system because of an abortion. Now, abortion, when you look at the nature of it, is not a situation where it's a criminal offense. In that situation, she is a victim. She is a sex worker. She could be raped. You don't know how she was actually, she conceived that pregnancy, but it's being used, and she's being treated as somebody who's a criminal, and she's being castigated by society. As you see, it was the people from the lodge that she was sleeping in that reported her. So she's being ostracized by society, and the criminal justice system is being used to actually do that. So instead of it being looked at as a health emergency, so that she gets the right care, psychological and physical health care, she's being treated as somebody without dignity and human rights. Now, with regards to the alliance, sorry, I may be going too deep into this, but with regards to the alliance and the work that we've been doing through the alliance, we have actually strategized ways that we can actually meaningfully use lawyers, researchers, and activists around access to safe abortion so that we can advance the rights of women and girls on the continent. So we're using strategies like strategic litigation, rapid legal responses, research, because we need research, evidence-based information to back up the litigations that are being commenced. We need to create a case bank of all the cases that have been successfully litigated so that we can learn from each other from different jurisdictions. And then we also are using it as a platform for movement building so that we can move collectively. And if one country is successful in progressing the rights of women and girls with regards to reproductive justice, we can use the lessons from there to also support our fellow countries on the continent.
Oh, thank you so much. I think this is like a very powerful and packed response. And in trying to unpack this, we see, like you said, that health is human rights. And instead of women receiving health care, they are instead being criminalized. They are instead being ostracized from the society. And like you said, that the law allows for abortion only to save the woman's life, but can only be done by a healthcare provider through surgical operation. So it means that even where the law allows under limited grounds, do you think that there are still health workers who would hesitate as a result of fear of arrest? And has that ever been a situation whereby a health worker is unsure of whether I can even perform this abortion, even though the law allows limited ground? Have you ever had that experience at Vital Strategies or through the Alliance? Has there been that situation?
Yes, actually, that is very, very true. The current legal framework, because of its unclear state, is very problematic for countries, especially like Malawi. For the exception to say to save a woman's life, it's only left to the discretion of the doctor to decide whether her life is at risk or not, which leaves it to the opinion of anyone. So somebody could actually just choose, because of their religious beliefs, choose that this person is not eligible to have a safe abortion. And then this legal framework brings in issues regarding access, which is a very key issue because we want women to have access to safe and legal abortions. Now, with Malawi particularly, because we've had progressive cases that have actually expounded what this exception means, we have the comprehensive post-abortion care guidelines, which actually outline what the penal code says, and then further breaks down the exceptions or the situations and scenarios that a woman can actually go and seek a safe abortion through to save her life. And they categorize those scenarios as those risky situations that are needed. So rape and incest, those are actually in those categories of some of the things that are outlined. However, these guidelines, even though they are developed by the Ministry of Health, they're not properly disseminated to healthcare workers, especially in rural areas. So most health workers do not even know that there's that framework that would allow them to actually provide an abortion to a woman who's in need. But so that leaves most of them saying, abortion is illegal, that is not safe. And this situation then leads to many denials for so many women. We have children who are victims of rape, survivors of sexual violence who get pregnant and they have psychological and physical ailments that really require them to get access to safe and legal abortions. But because of the health facilities that are closer to their homes, have healthcare providers who are unaware of the current state of the laws, they deny them these services. And this is really something that also criminalizes somebody and the girls, because now for somebody to go and actually seek a service, they're scared because they fear that the healthcare worker could actually report them to the police or lead to their criminalization or have them arrested. So it's very complex. As Vital Rights Foundation in Malawi, we have taken note of this situation, and we've been conducting legal aid clinics. In April, we had one at the One Stop Center, which is an initiative that was done by the district local councils, where they have one-stop centers that deal with victims of sexual violence, and they have a nurse, a police officer, and a social welfare officer at the one-stop center to help victims. So we had a legal aid clinic where we advised and gave healthcare providers a little bit of knowledge on what the law says on abortion, what their duties and rights are under the Gender Equality Act. And we also had the opportunity to also have one same initiative in a local rural area. So we do this so that we can at least sensitize the communities and the healthcare providers of what the law says and what their rights are with regards to access to safe and legal abortion.
Thank you so much. I like the idea of the one-stop center, but I want to ask, I know that Vital Rights Foundation is doing some sort of bridging the gap for legal literacy, but how do we scale this up? How do we scale this up to ensure that health workers are at least aware that they have a duty first to save lives in order to avoid a situation whereby women are incarcerated or women even die as a result of unsafe or clandestine abortions? How do we bridge this legal gap?
Okay. Now, bridging the legal gap is not something we can do overnight, but it's a process. I think a very good step that we can definitely take is sensitizing local leaders, sensitizing duty bearers, telling the leadership within the ministry to disseminate the information in the correct way. We have partners and activists in Malawi that have also been engaging the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Health, so that we can actually tell them what the current state of the law is, and they should disseminate the clear position of the law so that those people who are deserving and are eligible to get a safe and legal abortion are able to access them in the correct way and their rights are not violated.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like you said, there's a popular saying that says that little drops of water ends up making a mighty ocean. So we're hoping that as we continue to do these bits and pieces of legal training and legal literacy, we'll one day get to a point in Africa whereby women are not incarcerated for reproductive choices that should ordinarily be theirs. But I think I want to ask a question. I know you spoke about the African Reproductive Justice Litigation Alliance, and I know that you're chair and that you've coordinated, as an alliance, you guys have coordinated legal strategies across Africa. What patterns do you see as emerging in SRHR-related incarceration across Africa? And how is AGLA responding? Because we're seeing an increase in incarceration and criminalization of reproductive choices. What are the patterns that you see emerging, and what is the strategies that AGLA is using to respond to these challenges or these emerging patterns?
Okay, so I would say that the emerging trends that is very common throughout the continent is that there's a lot of recognition of how archaic our laws are. Most of us, like Malawi's Penal Code, was enacted in 1930. That was before any of us were even born. And that was way before independence. So these are colonial laws, and that's an emerging trend that has been there, and there's a realization that our laws are very archaic. So now the trend is we are trying to reform the laws. Of course, there's a resistance to change our penal laws, but at least if we can lobby and change and try to have our legislators review, and if they can't do it, we use the court system, the judicial system, the same judicial system that is being used to incarcerate women and girls, if we are to use it as a tool to actually change that laws and force the legislators to review the laws so that they are our own laws that really speak to African values, that really speak to our current contextual issues as Africans. I think that's something that we can do. Now, one strategy that the Alliance really aims to really use and really really enforce with our partners and members of the Alliance is that we want to use the court system not as a place that is for punitive measures. It should be a transformative place. So there's litigations that are really opening up the space. We have really good cases coming out of countries like Zimbabwe, coming out. We are seeing successes from Rwanda because we're really using the courts and the judicial system to transform rather than to incarcerate. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and we're also building networks along the country so that along the continent, so that whatever we do, we actually move together because there is power in numbers and there is a strong voice from the reproductive justice advocates and lawyers and litigants who are actually pursuing justice for women and girls.
Thank you so much. So I'm so excited that while we've talked about challenges, we've also talked about success stories. It's exciting to know that the cases are opening up in Rwanda, in Kenya, and we're hearing some of this positive success stories. So it means that all hope is not lost after all for us in Africa. So I'll close by asking this question, looking ahead, what does reproductive justice mean to you in an African context? And what kind of legal systems do we need to get there?
Yes, thank you. This is a very deep question for anyone. My vision of reproductive justice in Africa is I envision an Africa which has a legal framework that embraces women's rights, protects their rights to privacy, preserves their dignity, and allows them to actually make reproductive choices without the fear of the law. I imagine an Africa which has a regulatory framework that actually embraces care and looks at abortion as a healthcare issue rather than looking at it as a penal issue. As I said, we also hope to see that the courts should also embrace this nature of the African reproductive justice landscape and actually become a transformative place where women go to seek refuge rather than that's the place where they are actually castigated from. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your powerful contributions and for standing at the front lines of legal intervention and legal resistance, not just in Malawi, but in Africa. I think your work with Vital Right Foundation and even with the Reproductive Justice Litigation Alliance show us what is possible when litigation is used not just to interpret laws, but as a tool of resistance and as a tool of fighting against injustice. So to our listeners, please share this conversation, support reproductive justice litigation, and remember that no one should be persecuted for exercising agency and autonomy over their bodies. Till next time, see you. Thank you.